going to ask that we all push further in to the grassy area over here, please. Thank you so much. Let's just push in a little bit more.
People don't want another war in the Middle East. Killing the top Iranian general and other senior leaders in Iraq 2 days ago is perceived by Iraq and Iran as an act of war. And it is an act of war. It's a violation of international law. It's a violation of the UN Charter. It's a violation of U.S. law. We had Iraq. That was a disaster. We've had Afghanistan. That's a disaster. No new war in the Middle East. No war against the world.
All right. Okay, thanks for bringing this up. Let's wait till
First of all, there's no evidence that prove that. General Soleimani is out in plain view. George W. Bush's administration could have killed him. So could have Obama administration.
What's he saying?
Not to.
The rest of us, if you stood behind the microphone, so that.
Okay, I got you.
And then
Yeah,
you can do, I mean,
cool.
probably that not pointed directly at the microphone.
As an act of
I got you. Cool. Thanks.
This is playing with fire. What's trending on Twitter right now is World War III. There's a reason people are scared. There's a reason people are.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Cool. All right, how y'all feeling? Are we fired up today?
Yeah.
My name is Sean Blackman. I'm here with the Answer Coalition. That means Act Now to Stop War and End Racism. I will be co-chairing today's demonstration along with my friend Leo Flores from Code Pink. You'll be hearing from him as well. But in case there was any confusion about why we are out here today, it is because we stand against the United States government and its unilateral bombing in Iraq, its ongoing war of occupation in Iraq, its killing of Iranian officials, its saber rattling and trying to instigate a war scenario with Iran, trying to bring Iran under the boot of U.S. imperialism so that the U.S. can complete its plans for full spectrum dominance in the Middle East. We are here to stand against that. We are here to say, stop bombing in Iraq, no war or sanctions in Iran, U.S. out of Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, the U.S. out of the Middle East.
Right.
And so we are here today to say, hands off Iraq, hands off Iraq, hands off Iraq. Say it, hands off Iraq,
Hands off Iraq.
hands off Iraq, hands off Iraq, hands off Iraq, hands off Iraq. So we're saying hands off Iraq, hands off Iran, and I'm gonna have my co-host Leo talk to you for just a moment, and we'll get started with our program today of speakers to expound upon why we are demonstrating here against this ongoing criminal war actions by the United States government. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Sean. My name is Leo Flores. I'm with Code Pink. There's a lot of groups here today. We've got Answer, Code Pink, Popular Resistance, Veterans for Peace. A bunch of people are coming out, a bunch of organizations are coming out to build this anti-war movement that's incredibly necessary at this time because the Trump administration has taken an incredibly dangerous step and is escalating their war on Iran. This is a war that has been going on for years now, since 2017 with the economic sanctions, which are economic war. This is a war that's getting hotter, and with the murder of General Soleimani, they've taken us towards the precipice, if not over it. And what we have to do, our responsibility here in the United States, is to show the people of Iran and to show the people of Iraq that there are American citizens who are against these endless wars, that there are American citizens who want peace and friendly relations between our people, that there are American citizens who are saying no more Pentagon spending, no more endless wars, no more environmental pollution caused by the military, no more deaths of innocent people in Iraq, in Iran, in Yemen, in Syria, in Afghanistan, all over the Middle East. We have to stop these wars in the Middle East, and that's why we're here today, and we have to make this movement grow. So we have to take personal responsibility and start reaching out to more folks and have them come out and join us. for future actions. So let's start a quick chant right now. When the Iranian people are under attack, what do we do? What do we do? When the people of Iraq are under attack, what do we do? Stand up, fight back. What do we do? Stand up, fight back. That's right. Thank you.
One thing that we always have to remember is when the U.S. carries out these bombings, when it makes it its priority to make war on all these different countries throughout the world, we know that the folks hardest hit in these campaigns are the average rank and file person in these countries, just living their lives, workers, laborers. We know that in any society, labor and workers are what really drive these societies. And oftentimes the exploitation of those workers is what's driving society. So to get a perspective on this issue from the aspect of labor, we're going to welcome Jasmine Zora from U.S. Labor Against the War. Please welcome her as she comes.
Thanks, Sean. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jasmine Zahn. I'm with an organization called U.S. Labor Against the War. We have one of our founders here in the crowd. His name is Gene. Say hi, Gene. Hi, Gene. A little bit about the organization. We were founded in 2003 to oppose George Bush's war on Iraq. In the summer of 2005, our founders called for an immediate withdrawal of our soldiers on the floor of the AFL-CIO convention. It was the first time in labor history where a major federation took a stance against the war, entirely bottom up and led by working class people. Truly a watershed moment in labor history. So shout out to Gene for being a huge leader in that effort. Thank you for being here. Today we heed the same call demanding an immediate withdrawal of our troops and no war on Iran. It is always poor and working people who suffer the most, who lose the most in a rich man's war for greed, for money and oil. And they need us, the working class. We don't need them to carry out their wars, to murder and burn working class people on the other side. They do need us, but we don't need them. Say with me, the bosses need us. We don't need them. The bosses need us. We don't need them. The bosses need us.
We don't need them.
The bosses need us.
We don't need them.
The bosses need us.
We don't need them.
That's right. We can build a country without billionaires where we tackle the real wars. The war on poverty, the war on racism, the war on militarism. Those are the real wars that working class people care about. That's right. The real enemy are the bosses, and they're right here at home in our backyard. Those are the people who we are up against. I've been an organizer on the ground for about 10 years, and what I've heard from working class people, what their real needs are universal health care, are quality good jobs with good pay and good benefits, support for our homeowners and renters, to demilitarize the police, and to actually invest in rebuilding our public schools and our nation's infrastructure. Those are some of the needs of working class people, along with saving our planet and reducing our carbon footprint. Our brothers, our sisters, our cousins in Iran and Iraq, what they really need is labor's hand in solidarity, not more bombs and sanctions that we send to them. U.S. Labor Against the War, those are our demands. And if you are a trade unionist out in the audience, come talk to me. We need you on our side to build the anti-war front for the labor movement. Thank you so much.
No justice, no peace. U.S. out of the Middle East. No justice, no peace. U.S. out of the Middle East. No justice, no peace. U.S. out of the Middle East. No justice, no peace. U.S. out of the Middle East, no justice, no peace. U.S. out of the Middle East, no justice, no peace. U.S. out of the Middle East, no justice, no peace. U.S. out of the Middle East, no justice, no peace. U.S. out of the Middle East, no justice, no peace. U.S. out of the Middle East, no justice, no peace. U.S. out of the Middle East. All right, we want to thank Jasmine Zora for speaking to us. I'm so glad she made that point about the struggles of poor and working people. Even though this bombing in Iraq was a unilateral move by Trump, we know that just the other day, Republicans and Democrats passed a defense bill that was $738 billion. Think about what you and I could do with that money as just regular people in this country trying to live. Think of the health care we could have. Think of the access to education we can have. We're here in D.C. Think of the affordable housing we could have. Think of how we could address homelessness with some of that money. So it seems that this government has no interest in investing in things that sustain life, but wants to invest in things that bring death, destruction, bloodshed, and misery to folks all over this world. And so that is why what we're doing today is so important. Because this unity and coming together that we have today is what's really going to strike a blow against these imperial efforts by the United States government. And you all should know that this is not just happening in Washington, D.C. This is a nationwide day of action against U.S. imperialism in Iraq, Iran, and the Middle East. We are one of 72 cities and towns in the United States are doing exactly what we're doing now and taking this collective effort. So now I'd like to bring to the microphone Brian Becker, National Director of the Answer Coalition. Please welcome him as he comes.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We're not just here in front of the White House. We're in 72 cities and towns around the United States, and this has happened in 3 days. This has happened in 3 days. And what does it really indicate? It shows that the people of the United States, the people, whether they're liberal or conservative, Republican, Democrat, independent, socialist, whatever they are, they don't want another Iraq. Right. They don't want another Afghanistan. Right. They don't want another Libya. They don't want another Vietnam. Because guess what? A war with Iran will be more like the war with Vietnam than it was with Iraq. Iran has 80 million people, an educated population, a strong military, a strong economy. Whether you like the government or don't like the government, the fact of the matter is the United States, this administration, Donald J. Trump, does not have the right to violate international law, to violate the United Nations Charter, to violate the War Powers Resolution, and start a war of aggression without knowing, and he doesn't know, and the generals don't know, what the outcome will be. There's a trending phrase on Twitter right now, and it's World War III. There's a reason for that. All the media is asking us, why is World War III trending? World War III is trending because if the United States goes to war against Iran, which has allies with Russia and China, how would anyone not think that this could be a repeat of World War I and World War II? Those wars were not a fantasy. They actually happened. They happened because leaders made decisions that took the world not only to the brink of catastrophe, but over the brink. Are we going to stand by and let that happen? Are we going to stand by and say to Donald Trump, oh, well, you are the president and you have the right to do this? Of course we cannot say yes to that, because it means not only a violation of everything legal of everything moral, of everything ethical. It's a violation of what it means to be alive. When the U.S. bombs Iranians, they say, well, they're Iranians. They're not our people. Our message here today is the Iranians and the Iraqis and the Palestinians and the Vietnamese and the Koreans are our people. We are human beings. We are human beings. We are part of one human family, and we have to stop the war makers. That's why we're here. I want to now introduce Mara Verhayden-Hilliard. Many of you know her. Whenever we get arrested, she's our lawyer. The reason we can protest and not get routinely attacked on the streets of Washington, as used to be customary, is because her organization, the Partnership for Civil Justice, sued the MPD, they sued the National Park Service, they sued the Capitol Police. That's why we have even a minimal First Amendment protection here in the nation's capital. Let's give a warm welcome to Mara Verhayden-Hilliard.
Good afternoon. It is amazing that in such short notice, and so telling that on such short notice, people are mobilized here in Lafayette Park, in front of the White House, and in more than 72 cities all across the United States. People are turning out to say that they're not going to stand by and let the Trump administration or the generals in the Pentagon take this country into another war and wage a war in the Middle East that will have global implications, a war that is so dangerous, so reckless, that all of us here and people all over the United States and people all over the world are now afraid because you have a man in the White House that has talked about using nuclear weapons. Why can't we use our nuclear weapons, he says. That's the person who is in charge of the nuclear weapons. And all of us are here to say that we're not going to stand by. We will not be silent. We will not allow our country to be led into another dangerous, reckless war. And a war that will kill thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people. The Iraq War, as we know, killed millions of people. A war of aggression led by the former occupant, George W. Bush. And many of us stood out here then. And just as then, this is a war of aggression. It is illegal under the UN Charter. The UN Charter that was ratified in 1945 after World War II, because countries came together and said, we don't ever want to have this happen again. The UN Charter, which articles state that no country, and the U.S. ratified the UN Charter in 1945, that no country can wage a war of aggression or threaten another country. And the only time that an act of military force can be taken is in self-defense, and the self-defense has to be such that there is an immediate, absolute, overwhelming threat that does not allow for a moment of deliberation. That is not the circumstances we are in. What the administration just did, what Trump just did, was an act of war, and it was illegal. And more than anything, we know it was wrong and it was dangerous. So looking at what we're faced with right now, and the violation of the War Powers Act, a critical resolution that was introduced by Congress after Vietnam to ensure once again that something like Vietnam wouldn't happen. And yet Congress has repeatedly sat back and given repeated blank checks to the administrations because they don't want to take responsibility. They want to criticize or support, but they don't want to take responsibility. So all of us, it's incumbent upon all of us and all of the people across the United States in more than 72 cities to stand up and demand accountability, to stand up and say we are not going to allow this to happen, and we are not going to sit back and allow another war and slaughter to engulf people who are not our enemies. I went to Iraq in the months leading up to the invasion of Iraq, and I went on a peace delegation, and everywhere I went, people asked me, Why does your country hate us? Why are they bombing us? Young women, young men, families asking us over and over, why are you doing this to us? And there was no rational answer I could give except to tell them that I knew that there were millions of people back in the United States who did not want it to happen and who were willing to stand up and stop an upcoming slaughter. And people did, people fought, people stood for what they believe in. But even now, you look at what happened yesterday after the assassination, what happened? Oil prices went up. It's good for the fossil fuels industry. It was good for the oil companies. It's incredible. And as someone's saying, it's good for the defense contractors. But when we're talking about fossil fuels, and we're talking about the military, and talking about the oil companies, and talking about who benefits from these wars and from these threats of wars, I think it's important to talk about the other massive crisis that we're facing right now, which is the climate crisis, which is an extraordinary, existential, absolute, defined threat that without question is going to steal and destroy our children's futures, any hope of our children's futures if we do not act to stop it. And I'm very honored and we're very excited that we have with us now, today, Jane Fonda, who has tirelessly and courageously stood for justice, for peace, and has, for the last months, been in Washington, D.C., week after week, organizing thousands of people to come to Washington, D.C. and in Washington, D.C. to stand up, to demand a Green New Deal, to demand an end to fossil fuels extraction. Under her organizing and brilliant leadership, there are hundreds of people who have taken acts of conscience, who have risked arrest and acted in civil disobedience because they know that the threat is real and that it's incumbent upon the people to act. So I'm very, very pleased and thrilled to introduce Jane Fonda.
I wanted to be here because I wanted to express to everybody that the climate movement and the peace movement must be one movement. The younger people here should know that all of the wars that have been fought since you've been born have been fought over oil. The bombing in New York and here of the Pentagon and elsewhere on 9/11 was about oil. Because for decades, U.S. troops were stationed in the Middle East to guard oil, and troops were stationed on sacred sites, sites that are sacred, holy to the people of that region. Did we not know that? Did we once again not learn the lessons of Vietnam? Not bother to understand the people that we were shaming and insulting? Not to mention killing? And the environments there that we are destroying, and the children that are dying of toxins because of the gassing, and all of the things that the U.S. has been doing there. So please understand, the Pentagon is the biggest institutional user of fossil fuel in the world. That we can't anymore lose lives and kill people and ruin environments because of oil and fossil fuels. Brian said that the war in Iraq was started by Bush. No, it was started by Cheney. Halliburton. It's always been about oil. Oil is killing people in the Middle East. The wars around oil are killing them, and oil is killing us here, killing our climate, causing fires in Australia. We have to stop it. This is what democracy looks like. Show me what democracy looks like. Let's wrest our government out of the stranglehold of the fossil fuel industry and take back our democracy. Thank you.
No justice, no peace. U.S. out of the Middle East. No justice, no peace. U.S. out of the Middle East. No justice, no peace. U.S. out of the Middle East. No justice, no peace. U.S. out of the Middle East. No justice, no peace. U.S. out of the Middle East. No justice, no peace. U.S. out of the Middle East. No justice, no peace. U.S. out of the Middle East. No justice, no peace. U.S. out of the Middle East. Hey, Trump, what are you saying? How many kids did you kill today? Hey, Trump, what are you saying? How many kids did you kill today? Hey, Trump, what are you saying?
How many kids did you kill today?
I said, hey, Trump, what are you saying?
How many kids did you kill today?
Hey, Trump, what are you saying?
How many kids did you kill today?
I said, hey, Trump, what do you say?
How many kids did you kill today?
All right. Once again, of course, we are here standing against this criminal assault on Iraq, on Iran, on the Middle East, this campaign of never-ending war being perpetrated by the United States, being perpetrated by the major powers of the world across the Middle East and certainly across the globe. And right about now, I'm going to bring up a seasoned peace activist, someone who was on the front lines during the effort. Some of you may remember not long ago when we were protecting the Venezuelan embassy, when this government was trying to support a coup in the country of Venezuela that ultimately failed. And so right now, I'm going to bring up Kevin Zeese from Popular Resistance. Please welcome him as he comes.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you all for being out here. Thanks to those who supported us as we face federal charges for protecting the Venezuelan embassy. We really appreciate our trial be coming up in February. We have a number of embassy protectors here today. And so thank you all for being part of that effort. It was a group effort. It was a collective. I want to thank Jane Fonda for uniting the peace movement with the climate movement. Uniting these movements will create transformational change. Transformational change. This is the decade that we will face up to climate, and we will face up to the Pentagon. We will put in place a peace economy based on clean, renewable, and sustainable energy. That is the future we are developing. The reckless attack, the reckless assassination by Donald Trump against the commander of the Iranian forces is living in the past. That is a war for oil. We don't need any wars for oil. That era is over. In fact, the era of the United States causing chaos in the Middle East needs to end. Not only do we want to stop the war with Iran, we want the United States out of the Middle East. Since 2003, since the United States attacked and occupied Iraq, since then the U.S. has destroyed Libya. Obama started the war in Syria, still going on. We have caused chaos throughout that region. Yemen is being slaughtered by the United States and Saudi Arabia. And what we're seeing now, we're starting to come into focus on a reality. We are in a global world war right now. The Middle East is the battleground for that war. But that battleground will shift and expand. We see already the escalation between the U.S. and North Korea. We see this last week in Venezuela, Brazil tried to attack Venezuela from the south. There were supposed to be simultaneous attacks from Colombia and from the Pacific at the 3 attacks at the same time. Only one occurred, and that was stopped by the Venezuelan government. So global war is with us. We already see Russia involved in the Middle East. We saw last week China and Russia join with Iran to show the United States that there's unity against U.S. imperialism. We see the United States reaching out to Saudi Arabia and Israel to expand this regional war that's escalating out of control. This already is a world war. We just haven't faced it. And during this world war, we see incredible weapons races between the U.S. and Russia and China and other nations. The nuclear weapons race started under Obama with $1 trillion 10-year plan to improve and expand our nuclear capacity, is continuing expanding under Donald Trump. The nuclear weapons race. And now we see a space weapons race developing. That weapons race will make all the previous weapons contractors wealthier. And the weapons race will be larger than we have ever seen in history when the outer space becomes the new battleground.
That's right.
So what we are here now in the beginning of 2020 is a critical year. It's a critical year for us to show both parties that militarism and war are no longer supported by the people of the United States. When Elizabeth Warren starts her comment on the illegal assassination with saying what a bad guy he was and he should have died, that's unacceptable. Only Bernie Sanders said the right thing. Only Bernie Sanders said the Iraq war was a mistake, and he said that the assassination was a mistake, and escalation is a mistake. That's exactly right. Donald Trump ran on a campaign claiming the wars in the Middle East were a mistake, we're wasting trillions of dollars, and here he is escalating those wars. We need to make it clear to those who supported Donald Trump that he was a con man. They lied to them. We know Hillary was a warmonger, we know that. But Donald Trump pretended to be opposed to Middle East wars, and here he is, violating international law and escalating those wars. So it's time for us in 2020 to build a peace movement that cannot be ignored. You here today are on the cutting edge of that new movement. This movement's going to expand this year to tens of thousands, to hundreds of thousands. This is just the beginning. Today, more than 80 cities in 38 states are holding protests to say no to the war in Iraq, to say U.S. out of the Middle East. We are going to accomplish these objectives. We're going to create a new world. The peace economy is our future. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Up next to speak, we are going to have Hadra from Students Against Imperialism at George Washington University. Let's give her a warm welcome.
Hello everyone, thank you all for coming out here. My name is Hadra. I'm with the George Washington University Students Against Imperialism. We are an anti-war, anti-militarization, anti-occupation, anti-apartheid group on campus, standing up against, students standing up against war, endless occupation, endless domination that the United States has been inflicting upon the global South for centuries. And right now, plain as day, the mask is off. The mask is off on U.S. imperialism.
That's right.
The media, CNN, New York Times, MSNBC, they are parroting their Pentagon and State Department lies. They want us to believe that it's imperative for us to go to war, that poor Iranians, poor Iraqis are our enemies, that we have to be there, we have to bomb them. Am I missing something? How does war bring peace? You know, Democrats and Republicans alike just passed a $738 billion defense budget. We can clearly tell $738 billion in the hands of big CEOs at Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Boeing is money out of the pockets, out of the food out of the mouths of Americans, of poor working Americans.
And on climate change, in the note of climate change, we're in a current climate catastrophe. Australia is currently burning. Indonesia is underwater right now. And this war for oil, this onslaught, never ends. Bodies will pile. The earth will be destroyed further and further while the rich get richer. And we're here to say no. That's right. You know, the U.S., the imperialists on both sides, the media, the corporate media, fed us the lie that we had to go into Iraq. If you look at Iraq now, with the use of depleted uranium, you have generations, you have babies being born with mutations. You have increased cancer rates. This is war and violence that continues for generations. And we're here today. I wanna thank all you for being here today, the young people, the older people, everyone. Because in this new decade, in 2020, we're standing up against war. We're standing up against occupation. We're standing up against apartheid. We're standing up against U.S. imperialism. We are building an anti-war movement. And we're not going to let this happen anymore. No more business as usual. We're standing up. We're not feeding the lies they serve to us in shiny new directions on both sides. We're standing up. And so I'm just gonna keep the intensity going. Let's go in with a chant. Stop the sanctions, end the war. No more violence on the poor. Stop the sanctions, end the war. No more violence on the poor. Stop the sanctions, end the war. No more violence on the poor. Stop the sanctions, end the war. No more violence on the poor. Stop the sanctions, end the war. No more violence on the poor. Stop the sanctions, end the war. No more violence on the poor. Stop the sanctions, end the war. No more violence on the poor. Stop the sanctions, end the war. No more violence of the poor. All right, we want to thank Hadra from Students Against Imperialism. And I think that just really shows how dynamic this anti-war movement is. We've got students, we've got young people. You've got to have that youthful vitality to keep things moving. But how y'all feeling? Y'all all right? Y'all ready to do a little more chanting? Trump says more war, we say no more. 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 Trump says more war, we say no more.
Next up to speak, let's give a warm hand for Paul Dunphy of Friends of the Congo. I think we've lost Paul, but well then let's
keep going with the speakers. We're going to do the song in a little bit.
No more with class wars. Paul Humphreys, come back to the stage. Sisters and brothers, we're here at the White House, but we wanted to get your opinion. This is a poll. This is an act of democracy. How many people here think that we should march a few blocks to Donald Trump's International Hotel and make sure that he and all the guests understand that if they're going to take the country to war, which means that thousands of people minimally will die, that this is going to be no business as usual, because you cannot have business as usual when the government that speaks in our name, says it speaks for the American people, is committing crimes against humanity, is violating international law, and violating the UN Charter. Now, we have quite a bit of media here today, and we hope the media actually hears the message. We think there are perhaps two Americas. One America that's in the boardrooms of all the defense contractors in Arlington, Virginia, and in Alexandria, and on Wall Street. They look at war as something good for their bottom line. But you know what? It's not their children who go and fight. It's not their children who go and die. It's not their children who are asked to kill people they don't know. Those are the children of average American people, and we speak here today for that other America. So we're going to go to the Trump International Hotel, and we're going to make it sound, make it clear, no business as usual when they're playing with fire and taking the country to another war. So let's just have a quick show of hands. How many of you are willing to march to the Trump International Hotel and let him and the fat cats and the war makers know no business as usual? Should we do that?
Yes.
All right. We're going to have a few more chants. We're going to line up, and then we're going to march over to the Trump Hotel. It's a couple blocks. We've done it before. We're going to do it again. Let's listen again to Sean and Leo.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna bring up our friend Paul Pumphrey from Friends of the Congo, because we know that what the U.S. is doing in the Middle East is not just doing in the Middle East, it's doing it in the Congo, doing it on the continent of Africa, and to make those connections. Paul Pumphrey from Friends of the Congo. Please welcome him as he comes.
The U.S. government has carried out a war against the people of the Congo for one simple reason. They want the minerals that are in the ground, which is roughly about $24 trillion worth of minerals. About 85% of the people here who have a cell phone have minerals coming out of the Congo. And the way they're going about doing it is they are supplying weapons and training and logistical help to the neighboring countries of Uganda and Rwanda, who cross the border and attack innocent villages who happen to be living on top of those minerals, because the mining companies know they can't mine the minerals if people are living on top of them. The result of that is from 1996 to 2006, the United Nations estimate that 6 million people were killed in the Congo, the eastern part of the Congo alone. And over half of them, 3 million of them, were children below the age of 5. At the same time, the second largest rainforest in the world is in the Congo. And they have been burning those fires to get the trees out of the way, to get access to those minerals. And again, we have the United States turning, in its media, turning a blind eye to the burning of the forests in the Congo, while now it's creating a great deal of floods inside of the Congo, because the Congolese River is now going over its banks and affecting people's farms, as well as drowning livestock. So the United States is carrying out an imperial war against people of color in particular. They're doing it in Iraq. They're doing it in Afghanistan. And they're doing it in Africa. Many people have heard about African Command, where the United States decides to expand its military influence on the continent of Africa. It was started by George Bush. But George Bush was only able to get 3 military bases put on the continent of Africa. So the corporations funded and backed Obama. And during his 8 years, on an average, he put 10 military bases per year in Africa. People were surprised when they heard about the 4 soldiers being killed in Niger. But the fact is, we got secret bases all over the continent of Africa, because the continent of Africa has oil and it has minerals. And U.S. corporations and U.S. banks want access to that. And you can control the government if you got a gun sitting in their face. So, again, we say no more wars. We say that the only way forward in this election year is for everyone to insist that their political candidate commits to cutting the military budget by 50%, no less than 50%. That creates the money necessary for the health care that some of the candidates are talking about. That allows for the money. That allows for us to have affordable housing. That allows for the money for us to have our students to go to school without being in debt for the rest of their lives. So again, we say no war. We say peace is the only way forward. Thank you.
Next up to speak, we have Leila Zahn, a member of Code Pink and an Iranian American.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here. And I'm in no means I'm a supporter of the Iranian government for what they do inside Iran. And as a nonviolence activist, I don't want to cry for a general, for an army general, but I have to confess I have done it since the moment I've heard that, because he is very popular. I believe he is not only a name, but rather he's an identity of an Iranian. He's the one who helped to destroy ISIS behind the doors of Iran. And he destroyed ISIS all over the Middle East. He's the one who interestingly has enemies, from ISIS to Jabhat al-Nusra to American new liberalists who